My eyes I look like Jeff the Killer. I don't look like the Joker. I look like Jeff the Killer. I'm trying a new camera angle. I don't really know how I feel about it, but we're trying it, because why not, you know? Hello, welcome back to my channel. So, a few weeks ago, it was confirmed that Todd Phillips was working on a sequel to his 2019 film, Joker, and this kind of got me thinking about the character and the different iterations of him that we've seen. Because the Joker is obviously one of the most iconic characters ever, and we've seen a lot of different actors portray him, and, you know, they have their own different versions, but I kind of started to think about who the best Joker is. A lot of people think it's Heath Ledger, a lot of people think it's Joaquin Phoenix, nobody thinks it's Jared Leto. So I took myself on a journey to watch every live action movie that had the Joker in it to determine who the best Joker is. And the answer might shock you. Or not. You'll never know unless you watch. Or unless you just skip to the end, but please don't do that. Also, sorry to the Gotham stans, I didn't rewatch that entire show to factor in Cameron Monaghan's version of the Joker. Sorry, this is just live action movies. So firstly, let me tell you how I determined my answer. I focused on three main things when taking my notes during my movie watching experience. Firstly, the comic accuracy. This isn't the most important thing, by the way. Like, the order I say these in is not their order of importance, it's just the order I happen to write them in my script. I don't think that comic accuracy is the most important thing in the world. Maybe that's controversial, I don't know. As I've said in a few videos before, if you take the basis of a character and you do your own twist or interpretation of it, I think that's fine when your interpretation is done well. Like, Heath Ledger's Joker isn't getting points taken off because he's like grungier than the comic character. But I am still going to be factoring in comic accuracy because it's where the character comes from. You can't do a take on the Joker without looking to where he comes from, which is the comics. So I think it is important to have that comic essence, even if there isn't an identical look or feel to the comic. Ow, that made my head hurt. Secondly, the interpretation. Obviously, not every Joker is going to be an exact copy of the comic book character, so on top of judging it from that front, I'm also going to be looking at that certain iteration of the character and looking at the quality of that interpretation, if that makes sense. You know, like how fleshed out this version is, how strong the design and characterization is, you know? Seeing the balance of insanity and evilness, the core, you know, Joker characteristics, but also the character quirks that this specific version of the Joker has, and how those mesh with the key traits that the Joker needs to be the Joker. And finally, just the overall writing, because, you know, it's kind of important. And also keep in mind, I didn't say it, but in case it's not obvious, this is all just my personal opinion. You are free to disagree, but let's all just keep all of our opinions respectful, please. So, let's get into it. Who is the best live-action Joker? Starting off at the beginning with Batman from 1966, where Batman and Robin battle the combined forces of four supercriminals who have stolen an invention and intend to use it maliciously. This movie is a product of its time in the best way possible. From the effects, to the language, to the costumes, it is so fun and goofy, and just so detached from what Batman and Gotham and the Rogues Gallery has evolved into and how it's recognized today. In this movie, the Joker is played by Cesar Romero. He was a pretty big actor in like the early to mid 1900s. This is the only movie I've seen him in, but he has a pretty extensive filmography, so yeah. And in terms of comic accuracy, I would say he's pretty spot on, at least visually, which I know for some people you might disagree with me, because obviously, looking at this Joker, he's very different from the Joker you'd see if you picked up a random newer comic. But since this movie is so clearly a product of its time, I think it's more fair to compare it to the comics of its time, and I think that for the comics from the 1960s, and, you know, earlier, Cesar Romero's Joker is actually pretty on par. You know, of course, Joker has always been a villainous character, but in earlier comics, they were a lot more censored than some of the stuff we see now. So I think that it makes a lot of sense that Cesar Romero's Joker isn't, you know, a full-on murder terrorist like Leto or Ledger or Phoenix. I think it's pretty comic accurate, so points for that. I will say one issue I found myself having in this movie is the antagonist role is split between 4 characters: Joker, Penguin, Riddler, and Catwoman. So in a weird way, I think they all did and didn't get enough of their character out there in the screen time that they had to share. Joker in this is a lot more passive and cooperative than we're used to seeing him. It's obviously not unheard of for villains to team up, and it's not even unheard of for the Joker to team up with other villains, but usually in those scenarios, he usually has cards up his sleeve or an ulterior plan or motive. He's never working with the other rogues because he wants to be a team player. You know, he needs to always come out on top. But in this movie, he doesn't really have a motive or a big plan. He really is just kind of co-conspiring with Penguin and Riddler, and for some reason, Catwoman, which I was kind of like, okay, it's kind of weird that he's so okay with taking orders from Penguin of all people, but whatever, it's not the end of the world. But something that actually was really taking me out of it was the differences between the Riddler and the Joker. Or I guess you could say the lack of differences, because they were really similar to the point where the Riddler felt more like the Joker than the Joker did. The Riddler and the Joker are both crazy, but they're crazy in different ways, and the Riddler is not on the same level as Joker. But in this movie, Riddler is not just on the same level, but arguably on a higher level than the Joker in terms of insanity and criminal intent. There's a line in the movie where the Joker is like, "You're a madman, Riddler," or something like that. And it's just like, what parallel universe is this where the Joker is telling the Riddler that he's like too crazy? In terms of writing, I can't say much. I wouldn't say it's good, but I also can't say it's bad just because of how much film and language has changed over the past 56 years. I will say there doesn't seem to be much of like a narrative or a story in this movie. It's very simplistic, you know, look at the dynamic duo, do dynamic duo things, and fight goofy bad guys. The writing is pretty funny and simplistic, and this applies to the Joker as well. 1960s display of criminal insanity was just like having him giggle after random sentences or move a bit more fluidly, jump around a little bit. But I wouldn't look at this version of the Joker and be like, this sucks, the writing's bad, he's not scary enough or crazy enough. It's honestly a fun thing to see how much the character has evolved so much from this version, and this version is still enjoyable. It's like the movie to show a younger kid, I guess, when they want to get into Batman, because the Joker and the villains aren't super fucked up, but they're still entertaining. So, Cesar Romero's Joker, not bad. Not the norm anymore, but still fun. Next up is Batman from 1989, where the Caped Crusader saves dismal Gotham City and gorgeous Vicky Vale from the freaky Joker. I love that description, and honestly, I love this movie. At first, I was kind of iffy about Jack Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker, and that was because of 2 things. Number 1, he was kind of reminding me too much of Black Mask. They have their similarities in their involvement in the crime world and sort of their presentation, but there are also the key differences that make Black Mask and Joker Joker. The businessy, mob-esque, maybe even womanizing personality that the Joker has in this movie before becoming the Joker reminds me more of Black Mask than it does the Joker. And it's so different from the Joker's comic origin that it really did throw me off. If you don't know, one of, if not the most accepted origin stories of the Joker is from the Killing Joke comic. This one. Oh, my ring light's reflecting in it. There. We look so similar. In The Killing Joke, the Joker is just some unnamed guy who's trying to make it as a comedian so he can get his pregnant wife Jeannie into a better neighborhood and start a better life for their family. But comedy isn't working out, so in an act of desperation, he joins up with 2 criminals planning on breaking into the chemical factory that the Joker used to work at because he's told that the money that they'll give him for working with them will be what he needs for his family. But just after he's agreed to help with the crime, he finds out that his wife was in an accident that kills her and the baby. But the guys who he's working with don't care. They need him to be able to pull off this job, so he's pressured into still helping them despite not needing the money anymore. And when they get to the factory, they're caught by a security guard. One guy tries to pin everything on the Joker because they have him in the Red Hood disguise. Red Hood? Not the one that I'm obsessed with, but that is where his name comes from. Fun fact. So they try to pin it on him because he's dressed like, you know, the Red Hood crime boss guy. And then they get shot at and the whole thing falls apart, climaxing with the Joker falling into a vat of chemicals that bleach his skin and turn his hair green and make him kind of cuckoo. And that's when it all just becomes too much and he succumbs to insanity, aided by the chemicals, but also by, you know, just all of this bad shit happening in one day, one bad day, and now he's the Joker. And in Batman 1989, part of that still happens, but the person he was before he turns into the Joker is completely different, and I don't really love it. On one hand, I'm a person that doesn't think the Joker even needs a set origin story because the person he was before doesn't matter. It's who he is now that does. And I think in some circumstances, Joker 2019, giving him an origin story can lead to people pitying him or sympathizing or, God forbid, relating to him, which isn't the point of the character at all. Hold on. So I don't care about his origin. I don't care about what his real name is or how he really came to be. But on the other hand, I feel like if you have to include an origin story in your movie, I would prefer it to be one that's more akin to the comic origin. And the origin in Batman 1989 isn't at all. The movie starts with the Joker as Jack Napier, who is a mobster and the second-hand man to Gotham crime boss Carl Grissom. Jack is seeing Grissom's girl on the DL, but it's not actually DL because Grissom finds out about the affair, and he tries to get revenge by sending Jack to help with this job at the chemical factory. But what Jack doesn't know is that Grissom has used one of his rats at the Gotham Police Department to set up an ambush at the factory when Jack and the other gang members are doing their job. But what nobody knows is that Batman also heard about the trouble going down at the chemical factory, so he comes in to stop it, and he and Jack get into an altercation, and then Jack trips and falls into the vat of chemicals. So the actual process of turning into the Joker is the same as the comic origin, but who he was before becoming the Joker is completely different. And I don't really like this origin because, for one, I think if you must include an origin story in your movie, I think it'd be more impactful if it was similar to the comic origin where the Joker was not at all involved with crime beforehand. And for two, the origin they went with in the movie is again just kind of too similar to Black Mask in my opinion. Okay, I feel like I've harped on the origin a bit too much. Let's actually talk about the Joker. I think his laugh is actually pretty good. That's always something important to note. I honestly should have added that as one of the 3 main things I was judging and just had it be 4 things, because come on, the Joker laugh is the Joker laugh. You know, you can't have the Joker that doesn't laugh. You can have a Batman who laughs though. Comic reference for you. And Jack Nicholson's laugh is pretty good, so points for that.
You did. I'm glad you did.
And I liked the Joker gas. We don't see that much on the silver screen, so I thought that it was super cool. I'll admit my bias because I think that the Joker toxin / Joker gas is just really freaky and cool, so yeah, I was pleasantly surprised to see them using it. I think Nicholson's performance is really good as well, but he is kind of stunted by the writing. I wanted to find which comics they used as their source material for this movie because sometimes they like nail the character and then sometimes it just feels really forced or awkward, and I couldn't find any credible sources or for sure answers on what comics they used for inspo. I assume that they use Year One and some various Detective Comic issues just for a basis, and I think that's really it, because from what I could find, Tim Burton and the team behind Batman 1989 pride themselves on straying away from the source material and kind of doing their own thing, which again, I don't think is the end of the world, but going back to what I was talking about, some of these choices and bits of dialogue for the Joker are really hit or miss. There are lines like,
I was a Pisces.
and
Did you ever heard of the healing power of laughter? Now get out of here!
and not even just dialogue, but there are bits like the whole, you know, Joker parade float or the stunt with the mimes that are well executed and feel really in character. And then there are other parts of dialogue that just feel kinda cringy, or almost like someone is trying too hard to do a Joker impression, if that makes sense. I feel like it's kind of funny for me to be dressed as the Joker and calling something cringy. as if I don't look like this. But anyway, and I also thought that the Joker being into Vicky Vale was kind of weird. I actually liked that Vicky had a significant role in the movie, but I don't know, to me it kind of felt like one of those product of the times in a bad way type of thing, where there can't be a woman character without her being hot and have every male try to get with her. And the Joker having any romance or showing romantic interest in someone is always gonna be kind of weird to me. Like, there's obviously Harley, but I think we all know, or we all should know, that that's barely a romance. It's an abusive, toxic relationship, and the Joker doesn't really love Harley. He loves having someone he can control and use. So for him to see Vicky Vale and be like, "Awooga," was just kind of weird. Another thing I thought was weird was the decision to make it to where before the Joker becomes the Joker, he as Jack Napier is the one that kills Bruce Wayne's parents. Feel free to disagree with me, because I know there are a lot of people that thought that that was a cool twist, and I do think it's an interesting take on the dynamic between the Batman and the Joker, how they made each other. But in a kind of ironic way, this addition to the complexity of their relationship kind of removes some of the complexity, because Bruce now knows the identity of the Joker, and something that I always felt added to their dynamic is that they didn't know the identity of the other person, and that they honestly didn't really want to know, because they don't really care about who the person is. It's what the other person stands for and how that opposes the other person's views. So overall, Jack Nicholson's performance as the Joker was really, really well done. He was the perfect mix of insanity and criminal behavior. He's got the laugh, he's got the appearance. The only two things this rendition suffers from is firstly just the effects of the time. The prosthetics that they use for his smile kind of limit his facial movement. And secondly, just the writing. Again, it's sometimes a bit corny, and the Vicky thing was weird to me. But other than that, I really liked this Joker and this movie. Moving on. Next up is 2008's The Dark Knight, where, with the help of Lieutenant Jim Gordon and District Attorney Harvey Dent, Batman sets out to destroy organized crime in Gotham for good. First and foremost, the lead up to the reveal of the Joker in this movie is still really good. Gotta admit, it's really good. But I also gotta admit something that's probably very controversial. The first thing he says as he's taking off his disguise, "I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you stranger," is kind of, dare I say, cringe. I'm sorry, but it just has the same energy of like, normal people scare me, 2014 Tumblr, I'm so different because I listen to The Neighborhood. You know, sorry. Look, I know that Heath Ledger's Joker is a beloved iteration of the character. It's iconic, Heath did amazing, I hope he's resting easy. But I feel like there are valid criticisms to be had of this rendition that people kind of shut down because of how much they like this version of the Joker, or they act like giving criticisms is an insult to Heath's legacy. But I think we can all have our opinions and still be respectful all around, right? So I'm gonna say I have issues with this Joker. A line that does a really good job highlighting one of my main issues is from the scene where Joker infiltrates that meeting with the crime bosses. It's where he like kills the guy with a pencil. One of the guys in the meeting calls him crazy, and really quickly the Joker's like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." This isn't the only version of the Joker where we see this, but it's the first one that does it. And it's the focus less on insanity or rejecting the idea of insanity, and instead being like this anti-society spearhead. The whole thing of like, I'm mad at society and what it turned me into, but I'm not crazy, society's crazy, has always kind of bothered me, just because it's not really the Joker. Like, it is and it isn't. It kind of depends on the iteration and the origin that it uses, because I mean, technically even in The Killing Joke it does kind of use that, but it's also paired with the chemicals literally changing his psyche. And in The Killing Joke, he doesn't reject the idea of being crazy because of what society did to him. He despises normalcy and humanity, but it's not because he feels scorned, it's because he's evil and crazy, and he loves being crazy. He wants to make people crazy. A pretty steady character trait throughout Joker's history is being crazy, and not only just knowing it, but liking it and using it to his advantage. So having a Joker that rejects the idea of being crazy is just kind of weird to me. I will say they did get his love for public stunts and attention correct, so credits for that. Also, they didn't give him a name or a definitive backstory, which is good. And I like that they did like the different story each time he like asks how he got the scars. I like that. It aids to the mystery. And I do think that this movie has the best representation of the relationship between the Joker and Batman that we've seen in a live action movie. Overall, Heath gave a really good villainous performance, and he had mostly good writing to go with it. In terms of comic accuracy, it's really not, but this is a different take on the character, and this take is really well done. And as I've said before, if your version's good enough, it doesn't matter how much it aligns with the source material. So, moving on. Next up is 2016's Suicide Squad, where Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Killer Croc, and other armed supervillains unite to battle a mysterious and powerful enemy, while the diabolical Joker launches an evil agenda of his own. Oh, Suicide Squad. Many words have been said about Suicide Squad by people who are much more articulate than me, so I won't waste your time or my breath. Besides, this isn't about the whole movie, it's about the Joker. So let's talk about the Joker, who in this movie is played by Michael Morbius. They decided to go with a gangster persona for this Joker, and it doesn't really work. I think a mobster-esque Joker is totally feasible, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't work in this movie. He isn't cool or intimidating, and I don't think Joker's performance of insanity is good enough to even look like insanity. He's just kind of like this weird, cringy dude. I think the one nice thing to say is I don't hate the display of Harley and Joker's relationship. It's definitely romantic, don't get me wrong, which I don't really love, but I think it does well in showing that Harley is really under his influence and has a twisted view of the relationship and how she cares about him so much more than he cares about her, and he is possessive of her, but he doesn't really seem to love her. I know that he's like, you know, set on getting her back from the squad, and she's his queen, God help anyone that disrespects his queen, whatever, but also he left her to be captured, technically left her to die in that car. She said she couldn't swim. He thought of leaving her after she jumped into the acid, tortured her straight up, and only started to get involved with her because he saw that she liked her and had power over her and could use and manipulate her. Could it be better? Sure. It could always be better. But I think that that's one of the more well done things in this movie, is their dynamic. A not well done thing in this movie is Jared's like Joker voice. He has such a weird inflection. It's kind of hard to describe. Like he like emphasizes certain words or just parts of words for no reason. Like they don't have any impact. Overall, Suicide Squad Joker is really not good. I think we all can agree on that. However, this isn't the only time Jared Leto took on the role of the Joker. He reprised the role in Zack Snyder's Justice League, so let's talk about that too, for fairness' sake. It is crazy how different these Jokers are. There's a different voice, there's a different look. He does know that Bruce is Batman, which I don't like, but this is also part of the movie that was all like, I don't know, a dream or an alternate universe or something, so whatever. That's actually kind of all I have to say about the Joker in Justice League. He's not in it very long, and he's only in it for that one interaction with Batman. They do mention Jason Todd in it, which I fuck with heavily because I love Jason Todd. That's my guy, that's my ride or die, okay? You can't see it. He's on my computer screen right now. He's a Funko Pop back there. I have a shirt with his face on it in my closet. Sorry. I jump at the bit anytime I get to talk about him. Anyways, Justice League Joker is better than Suicide Squad Joker, without a fucking doubt. But all that really does is help Jared Leto, you know, since this is like per actor, not per movie. I think with all that being said, we can move on. Next up is 2019's film Joker, where a failed comedian begins a slow descent into madness as he transforms into a criminal mastermind. Not to be ageist or whatever, but I do think it was an interesting choice to make him as old as he is. I don't usually think of an older dude when I think of the Joker. In all honesty, I see him as like basically ageless. But also with the direction they took his character in for this movie, I think his age does make sense. In all honesty, I don't like this movie. I really don't like this movie. It takes all of my issues from Batman 1989 and The Dark Knight and puts them all together and then amps them up completely. Firstly, he has a name. I've already talked about why I don't like that. And maybe it's unfair to say that in this circumstance because my whole thing is like, he doesn't need a name because who he was before doesn't matter. But this entire movie is an origin story showing in detail how he became the Joker. But I don't think that that needs a movie, especially when Todd Phillips went in the direction he did with this story, because this whole movie is basically an issue I had with The Dark Knight, which is the anti-society thing, but amped up to be even more than it was before. Because in this movie, Joker is Arthur, this socially awkward, mentally ill guy. He lives in a shitty apartment with his mom, who he has to take care of. He's trying to get into comedy, but it doesn't work because he just doesn't understand comedy. His therapist doesn't care about him. His favorite talk show host doesn't care about him. The city officials doesn't care about him. Society doesn't care. So let's start killing people. My biggest issue with this movie is that it allows sympathy for the Joker. That is so not the fucking point of the Joker. The Joker is not this downtrodden voice for the little guy, stick it to the man character. He is otherworldly fucked up, and that's oftentimes overlooked because it's not really something that's put into mainstream movies, which is fine. I think that that would be kind of traumatizing to make some of the things that he does in the comics into live action, so I'm not saying that like that needs to happen, but it's just, you know, it's just a thing. He is toned down for the big screen. So I think a lot of people don't see and realize how evil he really is. And when someone sees this loser that finally sticks up for himself or for the lower class or sticks it to the elites or whatever, some people can find sympathy in that story or empowerment or relatability. And that is so beyond opposite of the point of the Joker's character. And I know that there can sometimes be a fine line between drawing sympathy for a character and just having an understanding of why they behave a certain way. And a way to make sure that you're writing an explanation rather than a pity story is just your narrative and your framing. To compare, in The Killing Joke, it does tell the origin story of the Joker, and it's a sad story. But it switches back and forth between present time, where the Joker is traumatizing Commissioner Gordon and Barbara Gordon, and then having these flashback pieces in between explaining how he got to this state. So you can see that what happened to him is sad, but you don't feel bad for him because you can also see in present time him committing these atrocities. Whereas in the Joker, it's kind of like a slow build of bad thing happening to him after bad thing happening to him until he snaps, to where it's basically framed as justification for what he's done and what he will go on to do. I feel like I might have strayed a bit off topic, so anyways, the writing is not flawed for the most part. I've already said my piece about the narrative and stuff, but like the actual writing isn't bad, I don't think. Comic accuracy isn't really there. I mean, they're similar on the front that they both wanted to be comedians, but it didn't work out. And they're also similar because they've had bad stuff happen to them. But Killing Joke Joker doesn't really point to those things to say, society hates me, so I hate society. And also, the Joker in the Joker movie still isn't a good person. You know, yeah, he had bad things happen to him, and that's unfortunate, but he's still, there are a lot of moments where he's an asshole, and he has bad parts of him before he even really snaps. But outside of comic accuracy, looking at this as a separate iteration, I do think it's done decently. I'm not going to say it's bad just because I disagree with it. I will say, after rewatching the Joker movie, I now no longer find the memes about Joker 2 funny because it just reminded me of like how bad Joker 1 is and the fact that we're actually getting a second one. That's upsetting. Next. Okay, we are at the final live-action Joker from 2022's The Batman, where Batman ventures into Gotham City's underworld when a sadistic killer leaves behind a trail of cryptic clues. If you are justice, Please do not lie. What is the price for your blind eye? Sorry, I had to. You guys know I had to, right? I got a wee bit of lipstick on my mask. Does that mean I yassified the Riddler? Okay. Maybe it isn't too fair to include this one because we really only saw a little bit of him in the movie and just a little bit more of him in the deleted scene. But I do think there's a lot to say in those little bits that we saw. I don't love the laugh, but it's not the worst thing we've seen. I think the visuals were really cool, actually. He's kind of deformed, his nails are messed up, his hair is patchy. He looks like if he fell into a pit of chemicals, and I think that's cool. And from the little bit of dialogue that we heard, you know, it's not much to go off of, but he seemed like he would be a really interesting, menacing Joker if Matt Reeves decided to bring him into a future film, which he said he doesn't plan on doing. I know, I'm still just saying. I don't hate this Joker. I know a lot of people took issue with it for some reason. I really don't get it because I thought it was cool. Maybe that's a hot take, I don't know. But I mean, that's really all there is to say. We didn't see much of him, but from what we saw, it wasn't bad. So, we have gone over half a century of live action Jokers. 7 movies, 6 actors, 1 character. But who is the best? Well, drum roll please. Jack Nicholson. Honestly, I was kind of surprised by my answer too. I didn't have like a pre-formed answer when I went into it. No offense, I knew it wasn't going to be Jared Leto. But I didn't really expect it to be Nicholson either. But I really liked Batman 1989, and I found myself comparing the different Jokers to Jack Nicholson's almost subconsciously, and just thinking of like, it just doesn't compare to Jack's. His acting was really good. His costume was, aside from the mouth prosthetic, which isn't even bad, you know, it just limits his movement. His costume was good. He was the best mix of crazy and criminal that we saw. I've already gone over how I don't like how he started, but this is me judging the Jokers, not who they were before being the Joker. And as the Joker, Jack Nicholson did it for me. I loved his rendition. So yeah, that was me determining who the best live action Joker is, in my opinion. Obviously, this is like an opinion piece. Let me know if you agree or disagree, and who your favorite is, because I am curious. I want to know if anyone's favorite is the Cesar Romero. I want to know if anyone's favorite is Jared Leto. Yeah, thank you for watching. I woke up at 6 a.m. today, and it's 10:30 and I haven't had coffee yet. So I'm having my like caffeine withdrawal headache because I have problems. So I have to go have coffee like right now. So I'm gonna go. All right, thank you. Thank you for watching this. And I will, oh, sorry. Oh my God, I didn't even do my outro. If you like the video, like the video. If you like the video, comment on the video. And if you like the video, subscribe to the video maker, and I will see you in the next video. And was I out of focus for that outro? Yeah. Am I gonna correct it? No. Bye.